Shalom, shalom. My name is Barney de Klerk. I'm not a Bible teacher. I'm a student of God's Word, and I love sharing with you what I'm learning. And this video is about the prophet portion of Sukkot. That's from Zechariah 14, verse 1 to 21. Zechariah or Zechariah, as you wish, chapter 14. Zechariah saw the return of Yeshua the Messiah as the son of David, the conqueror, King of Kings. It is preceded by Zechariah 13, by Israel's recognition of Yeshua as the Holy Spirit will break open a new spring of fresh water for their purification. And it won't be an easy process, as Zechariah writes, that 2/3 of the nation will perish. And in fact, 2/3 of Israel already perished in the pogroms, in the Holocaust, in other unspeakable cruelties imposed by the Revelation 17 great harlot church over the past 2,000 years. Yes, it was the church who incited the Holocaust and motivated it. Specifically, the Lutheran Church, Martin Luther's theology, promoted the burning and murdering of Jews. And you can read that in a book he wrote, his last book, I believe, that he published in his life. It's called About the Jews and Their Lies. Martin Luther, Jew hater number one in the world, the theologian for Adolf Hitler. And for, well, the Islamists subscribe not to be Protestants, but their theology is not so different from Martin Luther's theology. And of course the pogroms, and then there were many burnings, murderings, theft of Jewish property, expellings of Jews through the ages in Europe. And in my own family, if I talk about my mother-in-law, when she was a 6-year-old girl, she saw her grandfather in a settlement outside of Kiev. Christians from Kiev came to burn the synagogue on Easter Sunday, and I'm specifically saying Easter because Easter does not relate to the biblical Passover, but in her perception these were Christians who came on Easter Sunday to burn down the synagogue. Mama Allah's grandfather wanted to save the Torah scrolls. These Christians murdered him for trying to save the Torah scrolls. All this happened in front of Mama Allah as a 6-year-old girl in her eyes. So, and she's not unique. Many Jewish families have horror stories like that to tell about Christians. This is how Christians defile the teachings of Yeshua. So if these Christians think they will replace the bride of the Lamb, I want to tell you, they are, the church is the great harlot of Revelation 17. There can be no doubt. And then again, 3 years later, when Mama Allah was 9 years old, it was the Second World War. The Nazis came in. Christian gave to them a list of Jews that had to be executed. The Nazi called for all the Jews to meet them on a 3 days notice. I think that was on notice issued on the 26th of September 1941. The assembly date was 29th of September 1941. They gave a street address, a crossing of 2 streets, which happened to be on one of the corners were a cemetery. That's where the Jews had to meet the Nazis for a negotiation or a solution to the problem. Mama Allah's father, my wife's grandfather, put his wife and Mama Allah, who was 9 years old, on a cattle train to escape, going to Odessa and then further on to Tashkent. That train left on the 27th. On the 29th, he joined with the other Jews to meet the Germans. The Germans machine gunned and murdered 30,000 Jews on one day, the 29th of September 1941, on that plain where they called the Jews to a meeting. That is the fattening of Martin Luther's theology, how it lived out in its practice. So don't tell me this great harlot of Revelation 17 is anything other than the Christian church, who betrays the teaching of Yeshua and has betrayed it for 2,000 years. So the church is definitely not the bride of the Jewish Messiah. That cannot be. Okay, let's go. Zechariah also saw how the United Nations will be gathered against Israel, against Jerusalem, to wage war. We see this happening in our day again today. These enemies enter into the golden city, from which many Jews will flee. And Adonai Eloheinu, whom we know as Yeshua, will return and step in to destroy those armies and those nations on the day. This is the first of two Gog-Magog battles. Zacharias used this name Yotevavhei Elohai, and it implies, because Elohim implies not only the creator God, but also the God who judges. The judge will come. Yeshua is the judge. He will descend from heaven with an archangel's trumpet on Yom Teruah, and he will step down on the Mount of Olives. Under his feet, the Mount of Olives will tear into two, making a way for his chosen people to flee. This is just as he split the sea in the Exodus for Israel to escape through the sea and Pharaoh to drown. In this case, he will split the Mount of Olives to create a big valley for Israel to escape through. And then he will turn his attention to the United Nations, as allied army to the north of Jerusalem in the valley of Jehoshaphat, or the Megiddo Valley, and the battle, Gog-Magog, battle number 1. First battle is also known as Armageddon, and that's how it will happen. He will split the mountain, Israel will escape. It will also be the fulfillment of Isaiah's prophetic song Manavu, which you can read in Isaiah 52 verse 1 to 12. The refrain is in Isaiah 52 verse 7. How beautiful is the feet of him who brings good news. How beautiful is the feet of the Messiah when he touches down on the Mount of Olives with good news of Israel's salvation from those enemy nations. That will be the fulfillment of Isaiah 52. And this is what Zechariah was writing about. In Zechariah 14 verse 12, the demise of the enemy, it reads like a nuclear weapon of mass destruction. Remember, Revelation talks about the sword that's coming out of Yeshua's mouth to defeat the enemies. It's a sharp word, but this word will have the effect of a nuclear weapon, because the enemy soldiers, their flesh will rot away while they're still standing where they stood. Their eyes will rot in their sockets, and their tongues will rot in their mouths, Zechariah writes. Symbolically, it is because their feet walked not in Aderech Adonai, but in Aderech HaSatan. Their eyes were full of evil intent, and their tongues pronounced blasphemies. They committed Lashon Hara. So they walked in the way of the Satan. That's why they will rot where they stand, where they were walking. Their eyes were full of evil intent. That's why their eyes will rot in their sockets. Their tongues pronounce blasphemies, Lashon Hara, against Adonai. That's why their tongues will rot in their mouths. And Adonai, in Bible history, Adonai has often turned the hands of allied enemy soldiers against each other, and he will do so again in this Gog-Magog battle, and you can read it in Zechariah 14 verse 12 as a second witness or third witness. I've lost count how many witnesses, because Ezekiel and Isaiah, Zechariah, Jeremiah, they all write about this, and John in the book of Revelation. Yeshua's return and war upon the United Nations, you can read that in Zechariah 14 verse 6, will be the fulfillment as well of Joshua's battle against the 5 kings of the Amorites in Joshua chapter 10 verse 8 to 14. That's the day on which Joshua asked for the sun to stand still, and Adonai made the sun stand still so that Joshua could catch every escaping enemy soldier and destroy them. Here in Zechariah 14 verse 6 we read that in the evening it will remain light until the enemies are utterly destroyed. So the Joshua's battle upon entering the promised land was the prophetic action. Yeshua's defeatment of the United Nation armies will be the fulfillment, and we know that as the first Gog-Magog battle as well in the Bible. After the battle, the survivors of the United Nations who drew up against Israel, there won't be any surviving soldiers, as I explained. There will be none. But the people who remained in their land, who did not draw up against Israel, they will be the survivors. I live in South Africa. For instance, I'm not of the age of serving in the military. I'm sure the evil government we have in South Africa, they will send soldiers to join United Nations against Israel because of their enmity against Israel. And those soldiers will be destroyed when Yeshua returns on the very day, the Yom Teruah. But we who live here in South Africa, thousands of kilometers away, we will not be destroyed in that one go. So we will be called as the survivors of these United Nations who drew up against Israel. We will be called to attend Sukkot every year in Jerusalem. And as Zechariah indicates, there will be some rebel nations who will not attend Sukkot. And for their rebellion and refusal to attend Sukkot, they will forfeit their annual rainfall, which means they will have no crops. They will die of famine because of the hardness of their hearts, and because as a penalty for their disrespect to the Jewish Messiah. And so doing, all the nations that continue to serve Satan will wreck themselves. These enemies in Zechariah will certainly include Egypt. They mentioned by name. They will forfeit their annual flooding of the Nile and the crops that grow from that, and presumably, or by extension, in the Drash and Ramesh exegesis, likewise will be the other Muslim countries. Zechariah says no Canaanites will remain in the house of Adonai Tsevaot. The Canaanites may refer to those nations. But through the destruction of all the Canaanites, the DNA of the fallen angel watchers will finally be eradicated from earth. There will remain not any of this corrupted DNA in the world. Then he returns, or when he returns, Adonai's Kedoshim will be with him. Pre-tribulation and mid-tribulation rapture believers understand this verse or Zechariah's use of this word Kedoshim to be his saints They understand it to me, the raptured bride will return with him. But my problem with that is this puts the wedding feast before Sukkot, or the marriage. It puts the marriage, consummation of the marriage, before the feast of Sukkot. And Sukkot is the wedding feast of the Lamb. So a pre-trib and a mid-trib tribulation brings things out of order. So I propose that Kedoshim refers to the heavenly armies in this case. The holy ones will be the heavenly soldiers who comes with Yeshua. But, you know, I'm not one to bang the table and say this is how it's going to be and there's no other way, my way or the highway. That's not what I'm advocating at all. We will have to wait and see, and it will not be too many days from now. I certainly think that it won't be longer than 7 years, not much longer than 7 years from now. During the millennial reign, Yeshua will mirror heaven, as we will see when we compare Zechariah 14 verse 8 with Revelation 22 verse 1 and 2. As it is above, so it will be below. It will be so because God reigns in both places, above and below. We also read about it in Ezekiel 47. Yeshua also said so when he cried out on the 8th day of Sukkot in the temple, as we will see in the Sukkot gospel portion from John chapter 7 verse 38. Streams of living water will flow from the Holy of Holies into the Mediterranean Sea and also into the Jordan Valley, from where it will flow into the Dead Sea, and it will restore life to the Dead Sea. Zechariah writes, Adonai will be one and his name will be one. That is the greatest prayer in Judaism. Adonai Echad, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. It's known as the Shema because it's preceded by Shema Israel. Listen, Israel, Adonai, our God, is one. And then finally, all our prayers for the peace of Jerusalem will be answered when the Prince of Peace rules from Jerusalem. The 8th day of Sukkot foretells us of this day when there will be peace in Jerusalem, when the Prince of Peace reigns from Jerusalem. And what a wonderful day that will be. I pray that Adonai Eloheinu will bless your Sukkot celebrations and that he will keep you, that he will shine his face, he will smile lovingly upon you, and that he will be gracious to you as he's already been gracious to you by providing for your salvation. I pray that he will satisfy your every need, provide for it, and that he will give you shalom, even in the midst of the times that we're plunging headlong into. Shalom, shalom.